Is this video about creating dramatic images with gels, or working with 250-pound dogs, or getting worked by 250-pound dogs, all while dialing in a 5-light setup? When it comes to dramatic images, lighting is everything. Today, we'll break down how highlights and shadows interact, which modifiers make the magic, and how a splash of color can turn a good photo into money in the bank. By the end, you'll have new tricks to make your images stand out, and maybe a few stories about working with giant dogs. I started this shoot with a clear plan. Dogs were not part of it, but when Laura asked if she could bring the 2 Great Pyrenees she was dog sitting, I thought, sure, how big could they be? Spoiler, very big. But look at those faces, how could I say no? Let me fast forward to my original plan, then come back to the dogs. So let's dig into the lighting. One of the easiest ways to create dramatic images is the play between dark and light. I started with the Westcott spotlight on a Profoto D3. This keeps the focus on the model's face, and thanks to the LED modeling light, I had no overheating issues. I was also at f8 at ISO 80, so I had more than enough power as well. Then I do something I rarely do. I added a 3/4 fill with a Godox Para. It's big, soft, and directional, like a softbox with attitude. Not quite as focused as, let's say, the Broncolor Para, because they use a softer fabric. This adds dimension without flattening the scene. I have it connected to a Profoto Pro head because the fully exposed flash tube fills the Para better. The light it gives is nice and even, and the way it throws light, I can have it out of frame. Plus, I was thinking when I go to incorporate the dogs, I can use it to get more exposure in on them as well. Next up, my front fill with an 8x8 frame with a full CTO gel. This lifts the shadows and warms them up, and keeps us kind of in the same tones as the dogs and the model's wardrobe. I position this directly behind me so it produces no visible shadows. Again, here is a before and after. For edge lights, I use zoom reflectors with 10-degree grids, just to kiss the model's sides and separate her from the background. Here's a before and after, each light, so you can see how it builds into the final image. Finishing the lighting test, I made some tweaks to the set by draping an unbleached muslin over the chair, and I started shooting wide, moving in for tighter crops. Tried some overheads, but wasn't crazy about that angle. Tried a side angle and dirtied up the frame a bit, shooting off the background, and loved it. Then I swapped lenses to the GF55 1.7 for more background blur.
I really love the way these images came out. Shooting at f1.7, more of my video light started to creep in, but I didn't mind it at all.
Pro tip, move around. Don't get stuck in one spot or you'll regret it when you see that the makeup artist standing off to the side has a better shot than you do. So when asked, how do I make this image more dramatic? I take dramatic as meaning, how do I make this image more striking and out of the ordinary? The first shot, I was using dramatic lighting techniques, but the colors were more monotone. I was thinking of a color tone that would complement the dogs when I moved to shoot them later. But now, by simply swapping out some gels and working with a different color palette, we're going to turn things up a bit. First, I had our model change into a shiny red dress to bring more visual contrast to the shot. Then, I added my favorite steel green gel to the back fill light, and a red gel to the 3/4 fill light, and a light blue gel to my edge lights, and I got this as my first test shot. And I wasn't crazy about it. Can you guess what swap I made that made all the difference? First, my steel green gel had to go, and we switched over to a deep purple indigo gel, and now we're getting somewhere. I'm really excited to show this image build up, so we start with our spotlight again and get this sliver of light on our model. Then I gel our parabolic reflector red. We dial it back in as our 3/4 fill light, and when added, it really makes the red dress start to pop. Then I incorporate our deep purple indigo gel and get this. The purple really recedes to the background and our model really pops off. Then I add in the edge lights on Laura's right and left to create more dimension and bring out the shine in her hair. Just to do a quick recap, here is the front fill by itself. Here's a 3/4 fill light all by itself. And here is just the edge lights by themselves. Now let's have some fun. I moved the spotlight just off axis to the camera right so I could get it to spill on the wall to add more depth to the images and add leading lines to bring your eyes more to Laura. Then I got this series of images playing with different poses and shapes. So now, how would I incorporate two Great Pyrenees into the shoot without completely changing my lighting? Because that would be too easy. I'm going with our first lighting setup because the warm tones favored the dogs, and I had our model in complimentary wardrobe as well. I have her sitting in an antique chair for a preschooler, so it was really low to the ground, which was good so she could be close to the dogs. So the edge lights that were lighting the model's hair in previous pictures were now lighting the dogs. I had them on 20-inch versus 40-inch C-stands because I know that I'd want them low to the ground, and this would help me get better angles when lighting the dogs. I dialed them up about a stop as well, so you can see when they do hit the model's hand or shoe, they start to blow out, but this is nothing I can't solve in post. In post, I was also able to get the dog's fur to stand out more as well. I was able to get some good frames with both dogs. Adora was gracefully finding her spot right in front and giving us nice lines. And Dutchie, well, he was being Dutchie, looking everywhere but the camera. Treats. I know, treats can help. But with these two dogs, treats mean drool. And when Dutchie gets a treat, he likes to eat alone. And that's not gonna help when I need him on set. Oh, and a quick tip if you didn't know. I find most dogs are pretty mindful of light stands and gear, but their leashes aren't. Better to have them unleashed if they're not gonna be tied up. And I really liked having two big dogs on set just kind of roaming around. But we did give Dutchie a rest and allowed Adora to steal the show for a bit, and got some really nice portraits and some really fun hugs. Now, if this was a commercial job, I would go over with the trainer what the dogs needed to do, and if this shoot was more about the dogs, I would choose a lighting setup that didn't have such specific lighting marks. But let's get into the post-processing on these images because the final color grade is really important with making these images pop. Now I'm gonna dive into the color grade on these images. The first thing I did was I warmed it up a bit, changed my Kelvin to 6800. And I'm just gonna dial that in manually to get it exactly at 6800. I left my exposure alone, but I did adjust my contrast to 20. Give me a little bit more pop in the image. And then my shadows, I did bring my shadows to 22 just to open them up a little bit. And then my blacks, for this one, I actually brought my blacks down to about -8. And then I just boosted the clarity up to about 25. And the retouching was done in Evoto with some final touch-ups done in Photoshop. And here you can kind of see the before and after of adding the color grade to the image. Now for the images of the dogs, I start out by taking our color temperature to 6800, warming things up just a little bit. And then our contrast, again, we brought our contrast to 20. And then our saturation, I brought the saturation down to about -7 here. And our highlights, I brought our highlights up just to 3. Our shadows, here I brought them up to about 14. And the whites, I brought the whites up to about 2. And now the blacks, I'm bringing the blacks up to about 15, making some different adjustments here just to deal with the dogs. And here you can see that before and after. And then what I did for the arm was I added a layer mask, and then using the AI features, I selected the arm. And once I had this separate mask on the arm, I then brought the exposure down on the arm, and I'll zoom in so you can see what happens there. But now that I had this separate layer mask in here for the arm, just to bring the exposure back, and here you can see kind of what happens as I do that there. And since this was for a video, I kind of did it rough like this. I would have really refined this mask, but here you can see what I did just to keep the hand from blowing out. So if I had to do it differently, honestly, I wouldn't. But if I got an opportunity to shoot with them again, I would look to create a set like I did in this video about cinematic lighting, in which I create dramatic images, but with much broader lighting. Because as you know, there are levels to this. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell to get more videos like this on Adorama TV.